In the 1960s, the state of Mississippi was probably the place among the states of the old Confederacy where the grip of white supremacist tyranny was its very strongest.
There is no state with a record that approaches that of Mississippi in inhumanity, murder, brutality, and racial hatred. It is absolutely at the bottom of the list.
Because of that, a lot of the main civil rights organizations thought that it was terrain that was too difficult to sow the seeds of equality in. They were starting in other places. But there were workers, civil rights workers in Mississippi, incredibly brave activists and organizers who began to attempt to push for black equality in Mississippi, as others had done across other states in the South. And when they did so, the forces of violent oppression came down especially hard in Mississippi. Now, while this was happening up in New York City, a 25-year-old math teacher at a private school in the Bronx was reading about this all and just felt compelled to get involved. And so he quit his job. He went down to Mississippi. And there he found out that he not only had a talent for math and education, but also had this incredible talent for organizing, for talking to folks, for mobilizing. His name was Bob Moses. And in 1964, this soft-spoken math teacher with a master's degree in philosophy from Harvard would become the principal organizer of the Freedom Summer Project, an effort to dislodge the state of tyranny by initiating voter registration drives.
We hope to send into Mississippi this summer upwards of 1,000 teachers, ministers, lawyers, and students from all around the country who will engage in what we're calling freedom schools, community center programs, voter registration activity, research work, work in the white communities, and in general, a program designed to open up Mississippi to the country.
People did come, and so did the violence to meet them. In the summer of 1964 alone, Mississippi journalist Jerry Mitchell reports Klansmen had killed 6 people, shot 35 others, and beaten another 80. The homes, businesses, and churches of 68 Mississippians associated with the civil rights movement were firebombed. Now, the FBI at the time offered zero protection, essentially washing their hands of the whole thing.
We most certainly do not and will not give protection to civil rights workers. In the first place, the FBI is not a police organization. It's purely an investigative organization, and the protection of individual citizens, either natives of the state or coming into the state, is a matter for the local authorities. The FBI will not participate in any such protection.
Now, this was the summer that, infamously, 3 freedom workers who'd come from the North, 2 white, 1 black, disappeared from a Mississippi jail. Their bodies were discovered weeks later in a dam. Now, Bob Moses had to warn young people coming down that what they were doing was an attempt to unseat a comprehensive system of violence that would not cede its authority without more violence.
We had to tell the students what we thought was going on, because if, in fact, anyone is arrested and then taken out of the jail, then the chances that they're alive is just almost zero. And we had to confront the students with that before they went down, because they now had, the ball game was changed.
Basically, come on down to Mississippi where the Klan will try to murder you. They just murdered 3 people who came to do what you are doing. Now, Moses himself would face all kinds of terror and intimidation. At one point, during a voter registration drive, a sheriff cousin bashed Mr. Moses' head in with a knife handle. Bleeding, he kept going, staggering up the steps of a courthouse to register a couple of black farmers. Another time, 3 Klansmen shot at a car in which Moses was a passenger. He cradled the bleeding driver and managed to bring the careening car to a stop. Bob Moses would eventually gain a reputation as one of the most masterful organizers in the entire movement, but the notoriety became too much for him. And in fact, he eventually just stepped away from it. He went back to Harvard to continue working toward a PhD in the philosophy of mathematics, and he would go on later to launch this incredible initiative called the Algebra Project, which he described as a 5-step philosophy of teaching, particularly teaching math literacy to both urban and rural communities. There are other names that come to mind when we think of the civil rights pantheon, right? Dr. King, John Lewis, Fannie Lou Hamer. Moses never entered that pantheon in terms of fame, but he is every bit as much a legend of the movement. Because breaking the back of white supremacy and anti-democratic forces in Mississippi was key to creating the multiracial democracy we have today. After George Floyd was killed last summer, Bob Moses told the New York Times, quote, "I certainly know at this moment which way the country might flip. It can lurch backward as quickly as it can lurch forward." I thought about that quote when I read that Bob Moses died yesterday at the age of 86, because I think he's right. Whatever is going on with the country right now, the battle that Moses waged for equality continues day in and day out.